What year is it? The Toa are not entirely sure what the fuck just happened. There was a blinding flash of light and now all our masks are different, our lightning powers are gone, and there's a giant eel attacking us. What the fuck? They defeat the eel with the power of friendship and swords. They then spot the village of Marinui. It does not go well. The Marinui Matoran are convinced that the Toa are just escaped prisoners of the pit. So the Toa end up spending a not insubstantial amount of time being shot at. Eventually, Defilak steps in and tells everyone to stop the violence. Defilak allows Motoro into the city as an envoy. It becomes very quickly apparent that the Toa no longer know how to breathe air, so the Toa stay just outside the city. Defilak agrees to allow the Toa to prove themselves. Motoro will stay behind near the city, and the rest of the Toa will go liberate the airfields that have been taken over by Karapar's Karas crabs. When the Toa get there, however, the crabs don't put up much of a fight. They are instead ambushed by the Baraki and taken prisoner. But to Defilak, this just looks like the Toa are in cahoots with the Baraki. Whoops. So as is par for the course with the 2007 storyline, we have to jump back a little bit in time again. The giant flash that mutated the Toa Mari briefly stunned the Baraki. Kalma wakes up to see that Prydak has gone a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and is clutching the mask like He also notices that there's a large crack running down the middle of the mask. Takadox shows up to inform his comrades that there are some new arrivals in Marinui, the Toa. Hijinks ensue. The Baraki then reach an agreement amongst themselves. The mask is very quickly disintegrating, likely due to the mutagenic properties of the pit's water. But as it's disintegrating and breaking apart, its energy seems to be leaking out. The Baraki are basically just going to wait for enough energy to start seeping out of the mask so that they can harness that energy to turn themselves back into the beautiful creatures that they used to be. Will it work? We're not sure, but the plot has to move forward somehow. Since none of the Baraki even remotely trust each other, they agree to leave the mask in the hands of a neutral party. Elik's former head lieutenant, Nocturne. As we will soon see, this proves to be a stupid fucking idea. So after the previous episode, I bet you're all wondering, who the fuck is this guy? This is Nocturne. Also, disregard what I said in the previous episode about him being Elik's former lieutenant. He is still Elik's lieutenant. Nocturne was sent to the pit because he got so angry that he split an island in half. He was already amphibious and actually immune to the pit mutagen, which means he's always been this ugly. The one thing he has going for him is that he's fiercely loyal to Elik. The thing is, this motherfucker is dumber than a bag of rocks. So leaving Nocturne with arguably the most powerful artifact in the universe is, say it with me kids, a stupid fucking idea! Tune in next time to find out just how stupid that idea actually is. Trust me, it's bad. I'm legitimately so sorry that I was gone for so long, by the way. Defilak has utterly convinced himself that the Toa are in league with the Baraki. Motoro realizes that there's no way he can solve this diplomatically and books it. He is then immediately captured by Hydraxon. Difficulty tweak! Hydraxon locks Motoro up. Hydraxon then runs off to capture other runners and places Motoro in the tender care of his mindless robot minion, Maxilos, whom he had previously rescued from a pile of rubble. Maxilos is also accompanied by a very good boy named Spinax. I followed the instructions to the letter to rebuild this guy because he's just so fucking cool. However, Motoro doesn't have much time to admire the awesome build of Maxilos, because once Hydraxon's out of earshot, the robot speaks. It's not supposed to do that. However, this robot is not inhabited by the machine spirit, it's actually inhabited by... I've once again gotten swole, bitch. Guess who's back? Back again. Motoro assumes, reasonably, that Makuta's just gonna murk his ass. But in a very surprising twist, Makuta offers an alliance. He explains that for once they're on the same side, and he also doesn't want Marinui to die. Motoro reluctantly accepts the alliance, and both agree that they're just not going to tell the other Toa that this is what's going on. They're just gonna pretend that Maxilos is Baymax instead of, like, I don't know, HAL 9000 or whatever. Okay, so but how the fuck did Makuta get here? Remember the green mist that Zaktan was using to enslave all those Matoran? Well, that mist was none other than Spooky Ghost Man. Remember way the fuck too long ago when Radak suggested that Makuta might just not have a corporeal form? Yeah, he was right. The gestalt that is Makuta is contained in this green shit known as antidermis. And trust me when I say we'll get to that. But okay, yeah, so Makuta drifted down the court as a green cloud and then eventually found this body to inhabit. It's that simple. So what's Nocturne up to? Nocturne initially gets bored of the mask pretty fast. But then he makes a very strange discovery. While he's touching the mask, everything he touches dies. Nocturne has some fun with this, but he briefly drops the mask. And a tiny little sea creature hides under it for shelter, absorbing some of the mask's power. Nocturne quickly retrieves the mask and runs to tell Elik that he's got the cheese touch. He never noticed Gadunka, the little creature that had found its way under the mask. However, as fate would have it, everybody would very soon be noticing Gadunka, as he transforms to become much larger. So much larger. This is my child Chris. They will be playing the role of Gadunka. I should probably do a whole separate video on my Furby mechs. Anyway, Gadunka got swole, and now he's hungies, so he's gonna eat. The Toa aren't captured for long, as they work together to escape. As a Toa of water, Holly is finding herself to be very at home in this new environment. Jala, the Toa of fire, is not. Neither is Short King Kongu. He does, however, find his sea legs when, in a battle with Kalma and Karapar, he accidentally uses his mask power to unleash a giant sea beast upon them. His Kanohi mask lets him summon random creatures. I'm pretty sure there's like a D&D thing that does exactly the same thing. Nuparu then discovers something that you usually only find in the continental United States, a cave full of guns. They all take one, except for Kongu, who takes two. When asked why, his response is 2 hands. It's one of my top 5 favorite moments in the entire series. It's just so perfect. Okay, real brief, Kongu's always been a badass. Before he was a Toa, he was a captain of Lematoran warriors that rode on giant birds. And now, in the universe's darkest hour, he decides that the best way to go is to be fucking strapped. King shit. Somebody call an ambulance, but not for me! The Toa return to Mari Nui, and thanks to Holly being an absolute bad bitch, they manage to regain the Matoran's trust, sort of. They then meet back up with Matoro, who's brought along an interesting new friend. Matoro's like, I don't know, he's just a robot, it's fine, everything's fine, don't worry about it. So, okay, I screwed up earlier, and I don't want to reshoot it, so I'm just gonna fix it here. I looked back in the book, and the reason that Defilak believed that the Toa were in cahoots with the Baraki is that they pretended to be. When they ran into the Baraki, Holly played a tough guy act, pretending that they were disgraced Toa to gain their trust. The Baraki did still kind of treat them as prisoners, however, it's weird. I'm sorry I forgot that. Maxilos then suggests that they all split up, which Matoro starts to object to, but then he's like, it's fine. Holly initially teams up with Matoro and Maxilos, but ends up just swimming off on her own, which means that these two get some quality time. The other two teams are Jala and Huki and Nuparu and Kongu. And now they're off to find the Mask of Time. Antidermis has many properties some consider to be unnatural. Matoro is stuck with Maxilos. They eventually run into Prydak and his army of Takia sharks. Matoro finds himself outmatched because Makuta's just not going to help him. But then his mask power activates. The Kanohi Trina is a very special mask insofar as its power is considered deeply unethical. This mask allows people to reanimate the dead. So Matoro's mask channels its power into the seafloor and raises up a bunch of dead animals that have been killed by Takia sharks. Now this is a fascinating dynamic. On one side we have a washed up dictator with an army of angry fish, and on the other side we have a necromancer being escorted by the Lord of Shadows. We appear to be evenly matched, said Prydak. Not so, Matoro replied, flashing a cold smile as he gestured to his reanimated army. My side has nothing to lose. I fucking love this series, dude. I really did just build this Hydrica and never used it. Huki and Nuparu have teamed up to search for the Mask of Life together. And Nuparu decides to ask Huki, hey, do you ever miss home? And Huki says, yeah, but why do you ask? And Nuparu's like, well, you had a whole fuckload of friends. You were a star athlete. You had it good. And Huki's like, well, what's your point? And Nuparu says, I don't know, I guess I just expected you to complain about it more. Huki's like, yeah, okay, sure, I miss it, but we have shit to do. Let's focus. At which point they're ambushed by Elik, who traps them in a nest of venom eels. He then fucks off to do his taxes or whatever. The boys then make the decision, we're gonna have to shoot our way out of this! And it's a great come-together moment for nerds and jocks alike. As they make their escape, Huki spots some of Prydak's Takia sharks, and uses his mask of gravity to slam them into Elik's venom eels, causing Elik to believe that Prydak's sharks have attacked his venom eels. I see now why you keep Nocturne around. He makes you look smart by comparison. Fuck. There was a thunderclap that just shook my house. I'm worried. Matoro is on his back foot as Prydak's Takia shark army gradually starts gaining the upper hand over his undead army. But then a bunch of venom eels show up and start fucking up Prydak's Takia sharks. God damn it, what the fuck is this bullshit? Prydak said, probably. This gives Maxilos and Matoro ample time to get the fuck out of Dodge. Meanwhile, Holly is searching on her own when she gets ambushed by Mantax, who poisons her with his spikes. Realizing she doesn't have the mask, he abandons what he assumes will soon be her corpse to go look for it. He is then knocked on his ass by a riptide, created by Holly. Because you should really make sure your enemies are dead when you kill them, especially when they're bad bitches like Holly. Her mask allows her to copy the abilities of any sea creature. So, naturally, she copied a sea creature that was immune to Mantax's poison. And then, of course, she's a Toa of water. You can't fuck with a Toa of water in the water. Holly is such a fucking queen. Anyway, yeah, I know this is what you fuckers want. Mantax and Holly both realize that neither of them have the Mask of Life. They reluctantly decide to work together to find the thing. As for who does have the mask, Nocturne is still trying to find Elik to tell him about the awesome new power he has. But then, Hydraxon shows up. Nocturne's like, hey, you're supposed to be dead, and Hydraxon says, Hydraxon curb stomps Nocturne. And now Hydraxon has the mask. Now the thing is, the jailer of the pit has no idea what the fuck the Mask of Life is. However, Dekar, the Matoran that's now trapped in the sunken place within the revived jailer's mind, knows that that shit's fucking dangerous.
Abandon reason, know only war!
And so the jailer of the pit decides that the Mask of Life needs to be destroyed. So he aims, and he fires. What happens next? Well, we have a whole bunch of other shit to cover first, so we'll get to that. Can you imagine how much this would suck if I did this in 15-second installments? Meanwhile, God, I'm getting tired of saying that word. Kongu and Jalo have teamed up to search for the Mask of Life. And they have a discussion about leadership. Mind you, in their previous lives as Matoran, Jalo was the captain of the guard of his village, and Kongu basically commanded the Air Force. At the time, Kongu learned from Toa Liwa that a little bit of humor can go a long way, and that being grim and somber as a leader doesn't always work. And Jalo's like, man, this guy would have done a really great job leading this team. Especially now that we're in the water and my powers just kind of suck. And he gets to thinking about how, well, the Toa team is completely split up right now. Notably, Holly and Matoro have just decided to go stag. He resolves that when this is all over, the Toa team will be a more united force. They'll unite behind one leader, whether it's him or somebody else. Jalo is a very interesting character. Throughout this story, he's been shown to be a much more community-minded person. Like, he organizes the strike at the beginning, and he's constantly trying to get input from his fellow Toa. He's a cool dude. Kongu and Jalo continue spelunking for the Mask of Life, until they find themselves in one of Kalma's squid hatching caves. And wouldn't you know it, the fuckers start coming out of the eggs right there. And they start really going to town on our boys. Jalo sends a burst of heat through himself and Kongu that causes the squids to go and they detach themselves. Severely weakened, they find themselves kind of turbo-fucked when Kalma shows up with Karapar. Kalma's like, hey, you're not gonna get away this time. I'm not even sure that was Italian. Kongu's like, you need a bunch of squids to do your fucking work for you? Didn't you used to be warlords? And Kalma says, hey, back in my day, you would have trembled before me. And Kongu's like, okay, boomer. Very well then, fossil. As it were. The group eventually end up striking a deal. Jalo says, hey, look, if we can get the Mask of Life, we can all use that power to get back to our former selves and get back on land. So we should team up. Kalma says, hey, I like your offer, but also you kill a pride act for us, okay? Why did I make Kalma Italian? Dead meme, bing bong. The Toa arrive back at Mari Nui, where Defilak is ready to chew them out. Some Matoran and a bunch of Hydrika have died because the safe hour is no longer viable. Basically, there was a period of time in which the Matoran could go out and harvest air from the airfields, without risking, getting eaten by anything. And now the Baraki are all kind of fighting each other. And all the sea creatures are generally just going completely fucking haywire. The Toa are like, hey, that's not our fault. Also, wait, where's Holly? As Defilak has just found out, she's hanging out with Mantax. It's just not a great look. So the team sets out to find her. On their way, Matoro and Maxilos are out of earshot of everyone else. Makuta reveals that in order to revive the Great Spirit, the cord between Mari Nui and Voya Nui must be severed. This means that Voya Nui will come careening into the ocean. And it's highly likely that everybody on the island will die. Well, fuck me, Matoro said, probably. Now the question is, how's he gonna tell his team about this? Hydraxon's about to put a hole in the Mask of Life, and as such put a hole in, life. But he gets his shit rocked by Holly. Mantax manages to nab the Mask of Life. But if you'll remember, everybody who touches the Mask of Life is cursed in some way. And while Mantax is holding it, everybody who comes near him has their strength leached away from them. So neither Holly nor Hydraxon are able to get close enough to take the mask from him. Mantax then tells Holly to deliver a message to the Baraki, to meet Mantax at a particular place to discuss terms. Whatever that means. By the time the other Toa show up, both Mantax and Hydraxon have disappeared. They all agree that someone needs to keep tabs on Hydraxon to prevent him from, destroying the Mask of Life. And Matoro volunteers Makuta. Because Makuta still has to pretend to be a big dumb stupid robot named Maxilos. And seeing as he also doesn't want the Mask of Life destroyed, he really doesn't have any other choice but to go along with things. Ha, you punk bitch. Hey, I finally figured out how to do playlists. So it's not made clear how Matoro manages to explain to the rest of the Toa that he knows that the cord needs to be severed without also explaining that he knows that Maxilos is Makuta. But he somehow manages to do it. So they now have to tell Defilak about all of this. This poor bastard must just be so exhausted by now, because he now has to come to terms with a couple of different things. One, the collective PTSD flashbacks of all the Mari Nui Matoran about a great cataclysm or whatever are very real. Secondly, his entire home is about to be destroyed and there's nothing he can do about it. Thirdly, the entire population of Mari Nui now has to be migrated up to Voya Nui, some shithole island he has no familiarity with, and then they have to pray that seeking shelter in the caves of Voya Nui is going to be enough to keep them alive while the island comes careening back down into the ocean into the southern continent where it belongs. And then fourth, like the rest of us, he has to come to terms with the insane geography of the Bionicle universe. I swear to God we will get to that. I'm just a kid and life is a nightmare. With the help of the Toa, the Mari Nui Matoran begin evacuating the island up the cord. But on their way, they are confronted by an old enemy. Or at least, the mutagenic waters of the pit have turned the Paraka into sea snakes. Basically just their spines remain. And they start wrecking the Toa's shit. Snake Snavak if you will, captures the Toa in one of his mind prisons. Seeing as the Toa can no longer breathe air, the formula is very simple. Make them breathe air. The Toa begin to suffocate and pass out. This is it. The Matoran are goners. Everything is totally fucked. Except suddenly a giant lightning bolt shoots down the cord, knocking everybody unconscious. Slowly, the Toa awaken from unconsciousness, and what do they find? Here I come to save the day! Good buddy Axon, mostly there when you need him. Snake Paraka. Bum-ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum. Axon is sitting at the water's edge, talking to the Toa Mari through the water. The Matoran are safe, and the Paraka have, quote, been taken care of. He does not elaborate any further. Did you kill them? I mean, it's not that surprising. If anybody were to have a body count, it would be Axon. Anyhow, Axon explains to them that before they destroy the cord, they have to get the Mask of Life. Because they essentially have to follow Voya Nui as it descends. Because it will basically take them to the place where the mask needs to be used. Cryptic as per usual. He then takes a deep breath and dives into the water with them. And he leads them to a secret chamber, where he shows them something incredibly strange. It's basically a Rahi that's shaped like a bus, as in you can just kind of walk inside it. The thing from all the trailers, this thing. God, it's like something out of Rick and Morty. I would kill for that set. I wish I'd gotten it as a kid. Anyway. Oh. Axon tells the Toa, just get in, it'll take you where you need to go. Everybody agrees that it's weird as fuck, but they need to get where they're going fast, and they don't have any other way to do it, so once again, cowabunga it is. I like to imagine that as they got into the creature, it made a noise like, "Ugh, kill me!" So no sooner have they all sat down in this strange hellbeast that it takes off. Just, I think you all know what comes next. I crashed into you! And I went up in flames a bit. Yeah, this is that shit from the ads. So as this hellbeast is careening down into the briny depths of Mari Nui, it without warning glomps up the Toa's armor and weapons, only to spit them right back out again, with all the battle damage fixed. The amount of horrid genetic engineering that must have gone into creating this thing, I don't even want to imagine. Anyhow, the Toa are now better than ever and ready to confront the Baraki to take the Mask of Life from them. At least that's the hope. I actually kind of like this tuning. Makuta, in the body of Maxilos, finally catches up to Hydraxon. Oh, and the very good boy Spinax has been with Maxilos this whole time. It just never really came up. Hydraxon discovers pretty quickly that Maxilos is not truly Maxilos when Maxilos starts beating the shit out of him. What Makuta doesn't realize is that even though he has some control over Spinax, Hydraxon is the one who actually kind of owns and commands him. So Hydraxon 6 Spinax on Maxilos, and the good boy starts fucking up Spooky Ghost Man real bad. The brutal fight ends with a classic KO. Makuta gets a whole bunch of rocks dropped on him. Brother, you are pinned here. Yes! I'm so glad I got to make that joke again. You know what? I'm actually going to take this time to show off my Spinax model. He's built exactly the same, I just used green parts where I could find them. I think it looks good, adds a little bit of spice. Here's a good boy. Here's a good boy. Anyhow. Mantax begins the meeting with the Baraki, Mask of Life in hand. As Mantax explains it, he's always had a wealth of two things: power and secrets. This relates back to an earlier conversation between the other Baraki. Takedox had been stalking Mantax because for a long time he'd just been kind of bumming around the ruins of the pit with no clear objective, except that he was looking for something. In the ruins of the once great prison of the pit, he's finally found what he's looking for, and it's not the Mask of Life. Mantax holds up a Brotherhood of Makuta Tablet of Transit. This is basically a get-out-of-jail-free card if you ever get up in the Brotherhood's business, used by double agents in deep cover. Ever since the Baraki were taken down by the Brotherhood of Makuta 80,000 years ago, Mantax had always suspected that there was a double agent among them. So when they were originally detained and slated to be executed by the Brotherhood, one of them would have gotten to walk free. And now he has proof. But who's the traitor? Vote now on your phones. Scully, you're not gonna believe this. Mantax's demands are simple. The traitor steps forward, or maskint. But before Mantax can do much of anything, a very hungry boy shows up. Mother, I crave violence. At the very same time, the Toa Mari show up in their mutant Thomas the Tank Engine. In the commotion, Mantax attempts to make an escape. He is stabbed by none other than Takedox. I really didn't intend on ending your life, you miserable mud dweller, said Takedox, but I must admit, I will enjoy the peace and quiet when you are gone. Yeah, the traitor the whole time was Takedox. And it makes a lot of sense in hindsight. When they were first captured, he was the one to offer Makuta a place in their ranks to destroy Motonui. He's also been the one who's been keeping the Baraki somewhat in check with his hypnosis powers. Throughout the entirety of the books, he's always been the one smooth-talking, as Liwa might put it. Sometimes the most effective first blow in a battle comes wrapped as a gift. Slippery motherfucker, this guy. I fucking love him. Yeah. You're listening to the Dollop! The ensuing fight is the platonic form of a clusterfuck. Huki keeps Kadunka busy. It does not go well. Jala and Motoro go for the mask. Motoro freezes Takadox's arm, preventing him from stabbing Mantax in the face. Mantax then uses said saved face to stab Takadox, paralyzing him. Mantax makes a jump for the mask, but is shot by none other than Gun Crab! And Jala swipes the mask. As Takadox is recovering from Mantax's venom, Maxilos enters the chat. Takadox tries to hypnotize the robot. He does not know the robot is inhabited by Makuta. It does not go well, because that hypnosis shit won't work on him.
Save your petty talents for the fish and worms, Takadox, and stop annoying your betters. You are pathetic as a warlord, more so as a traitor, and now this? Oh, this is just laughable.
Absolutely fucking savage.
Walk it off, you punk bitch.
Welcome back to Bohemia, everyone! Maxilos is so busy drunk-uncling Takadox that he doesn't notice Motoro swimming up behind him. Motoro then freezes Maxilos, because he no longer wishes to be fucked with by Makuta. But he hears Makuta's voice in his head, and it says, "I am proud of you." The way Makuta sees it, he's corrupted Motoro, driven him to lie to his teammates, perform treacherous acts, etc., etc. And I would personally say that no, you froze the most evil being in the known universe in ice. I think that deserves a pat on the back. Anyway, Hydraxon's also here, and he still want make mask go boom boom. Oh fuck. Hydraxon proceeds to treat Jala exactly the way that you would expect a jailer to treat a prisoner. Jala manages to put up a flame wall between the two of them, preventing him from getting to the mask. However, the heat thaws Maxilos, and he sicks Spinax on the jailer, because the goodest boy was obviously always an avatar of chaos. Maxilos thanks Jala for thawing him, and Jala's like, "Holy shit, you can talk?" From the Metro Nui Times, I'm Toa Barbaro. This is the Daily. The Toa are hightailing it to the court, because they're gonna make it go boom. On the way there, Motoro explains the whole situation with Maxilos to Jala. And he confides in Jala that he, one, doesn't feel right being the bearer of the Mask of Life, nor does he feel right being a Toa in the first place, because he just doesn't feel like, well, a good Toa. But Jala tells him he thinks the mask made the right choice. Jala thinks the mask made the right choice because Motoro's spirit is in the right place. He's more than willing to put himself on the line for the greater good, and he stops at nothing to get his missions done. So Jala hands Motoro the mask. And he tells him, "Hey, don't let it get stolen again, alright?" And Motoro says, "Don't worry, this time I'm not going anywhere." Man, things are gonna get rough in the next couple episodes. But for now, it's time to regroup with the rest of the team. They got shit to blow up. Let's go! I built another Vaki shelf. The Toa have arrived at the court and are ready to blow it up, but they're immediately beset by some old friends. One of them is the 300-foot venom eel from before. The other one is a giant sea behemoth that Kongu summoned to defeat the venom eel earlier in the book, which I may have forgotten to mention. And the third you can probably guess by now. "Prepare to meet your mentor," Gadunka didn't say because he can't talk. In his infinite wisdom, Kongu decides to try and use his mask again to summon something else to defeat the giant monster that he summoned to defeat the other giant monster. King shit. But he crit fails on the use of his mask power and just summons a little glowy fish that the behemoth proceeds to devour. Congratulations, you summoned a giant sea beast and then you fed it. But then Holly's like, "Wait, no, Kongu, I have an idea." She uses her mask power to imitate the little glowy fish and light up like a firefly. And then, of course, the big-ass behemoth thinks, "Lunch," and follows her as she swims under a large outcropping of rocks. Kongu then blasts the rocks, crushing the behemoth. Way to go, buddy. What's good? The venom eel is disposed of in relatively short order, as Huki uses his mask of gravity to lower the creature's gravity, and then Holly uses a current to push it away. For a little bit, at least. Meanwhile, Gadunka has his sights set on the mask, because it's very shiny. Motoro and Jala are down very quickly, so Nuparu has to sweep in to play defense. He first tries distracting Gadunka by using his mask of stealth to flash in and out of existence, but Gadunka just doesn't give a shit. He then throws a rock at Gadunka, who, once again, does not give a shit. So Nuparu summons all his elemental strength, and rips a fucking chasm in the earth. Gadunka's caught completely off guard and, well, falls in the hole. Absolutely stellar work from Nuparu. However, Gadunka hops right the fuck back out. He clobbers the Toa and then gets his hands on the Mask of Life, and it seems like all is lost. But the mask just shrinks Gadunka down to his original size. Good shit! Thank you for your service, darling. Maxilos knows that for the Toa's mission to succeed, he has to buy them time. Specifically, he needs to distract the Baraki. And we all know he's gonna have fun doing it. Maxilos calmly approaches the Baraki. Takadox tries to warn them about Maxilos, but Kalma says, "Hey, fuck you!" The only reason this sniveling little shit stain is still allowed to hang around his old comrades is because they've all collectively decided that they need as much firepower as they can get to fight the Toa and take the Mask of Life. After that, they're probably just gonna kill him. Anyway, Maxilos arrives and tells the Baraki that they're not going anywhere. And Prydak's response is basically, "Fuck you, Robocop!" And Maxilos then proceeds to fuck with Prydak.
Do you remember when we first met, Prydak? Let me see. You were standing before me in chains. You talked about how you were once a servant of the Brotherhood of Makuta, but you were moving on to bigger things. Tell me, When exactly are you planning to arrive?
Prydak's like, oh shit, shit's about to go down. World Star! The first one to get his shit pushed in is Karapar, who charges at Maxilos head first. But Makuta basically just dodges and makes Karapar run into a wall. And he makes short work of the rest of the Baraki too. Prydak and Takedox are the only ones left standing. Prydak asks Makuta, why couldn't you just let us have this, man? Why are you standing in our way now? And Makuta basically just says,
You don't mean shit to me.
at which point Takedox comes running up with his fucking tablet of transit. He's like, Makuta, under Brotherhood law, if I have this tablet, you have to let me pass and not kill me, yeah? Yeah? Makuta takes the tablet of transit from Takedox and smashes it to bits right in front of his face.
Bazinga!
He then sends Takedox into the same sort of acid trip that he sent Vakama into in Time Trap. Takedox has once again become his old glorious self, surveying the massive armies he once had. And he's just loving it. But then he realizes that the ground underneath his soldiers is made entirely of the weird creepy crawlies that he used to command when he was under the ocean. His army does nothing as the creatures begin to advance on him. He tries to escape but becomes surrounded. And it's heavily implied that he gets eaten alive. Back in the real world, Makuta and Prydak share a tender moment together as they watch Takedox flail around shitting himself. God, what a shitheel, Prydak said, probably. Maxilos then notices that the rest of the Baraki have gotten back up, and now all of their armies have arrived. The tables have turned definitively, and it doesn't take very long for Makuta's new body to become nothing more than the printer from Office Space. And now with Makuta defeated and their armies gathered, the Baraki set out once more to get the Mask of Life from the clutches of the Toa. Oh god, what the hell? The Toa blow up the cord, and then the gravity of the situation starts sinking in as the island starts sinking. And so they start swimming like their lives depend on it, because they do. The Baraki and their armies are on their tail, gaining on them fast. And then all of a sudden, something changes. There's a shift in the energies of the universe. Makuta, in what remains of his body, feels it too. Madanui is dead. They're too late. It's over. Madanui is no longer. This is the end. As he shambles through the depths alone, Makuta makes a silent prayer to the Toamari that, despite everything, they won't give up, because there still has to be a shot at this. Because without Madanui, there's just nothing. And with the Baraki closing in, Motoro reaches the same conclusion. It can't end here. He has to keep pushing on, whatever the fuck that means. Fate be damned. It's really hard to do a somber cold open. Motoro tells Jala that he's going to push on no matter what, because there's just no other option. Had this been any other time, Jala would have just assumed that Motoro was, insane or suicidal. But at this point, Jala knows better. And he knows Motoro's right. The rest of the Toa team agree to hang back and hold off the Baraki so that Motoro can make one last desperate push, knowing full well that they will probably die here. Motoro and Jala share a final handshake. Holly cracks wise, saying hey, make sure you get a good chronicler to tell her story when you get back to Metro Nui. The team watches Motoro leave, and the 5 remaining Toamari prepare for their final battle. This Toa team has always been different. In large part thanks to Jala's more engaged style of leadership, they've been more united than any other team, and more competent. From Jala, the captain of the guard, to Nuparu, the master engineer, this is the best of the best. I'm going to defeat you with the power of friendship and this gun I found. While Motoro races to save the universe, the rest of the Toamari fight the Baraki with everything they've got. And despite their best efforts, they seem to be losing. As they begin to get overwhelmed, Holly notices that the armies of the 6 kingdoms are just going around them after Motoro. Jala realizes this too, and he chooses to take some very drastic measures. We've never really discussed this before, but Toa contain an immense amount of elemental energy. And if they release it all at once, they can perform what is called a Nova Blast. A Nova Blast performed at full potential can encompass an area larger than the city of Metro Nui, and pretty much destroy everything within it. As you can imagine, with a Toa of fire, this would be particularly devastating. This is what Jala is preparing to do. This will destroy the Baraki, but also his friends in the process. But Jala and his team have already determined that they're willing to do anything to make this work. Anything. What the dog doing? Motoro is swimming faster and faster. He's swimming as fast as he can to try and outpace the island of Voyanui, and he's losing. The island rockets through a hole in the seafloor, and Motoro follows it. And he's greeted by an enormous space. The hole in the seafloor has allowed water to flow into it for 1,000 years, yet it still remains mostly dry. That's how fucking big this place is. And below him, there's a giant landmass with a Voyanui-shaped hole in it. Previously in the story, the Matoran of Voyanui had mentioned that Voyanui had broken off from something called the Southern Continent. This is what Motoro is seeing. This is basically like if you were swimming down into the Mariana Trench and then all of a sudden you broke into this dome that was holding Australia inside it or whatever. This shit is gigantic. What Motoro notices next is that there's this beautiful radiant light emanating from the hole where Voyanui broke off from, and he quickly realizes that this is where the Mask of Life has to be used. It's almost that time. Motoro pushes himself harder and harder to outpace the island of Voyanui as it falls back into place, because he knows that once it falls into place, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get to whatever the fuck is underneath, and that his friends probably won't be able to hold off the Baraki long enough for him to find a solution. So, once again, cowabunga it is. He pushes himself harder and harder until he's level with the island, and then he's past it. The island slams into place behind him, and then suddenly Motoro finds himself falling instead of swimming. He's tumbling down within this giant waterfall, and he can't really see anything outside aside from this brilliant white light and these strange bat-like silhouettes. He has no idea where he is, and he's not really sure what to do. But then a voice from some indeterminate place says, "Put on the mask." Motoro has no idea what he's hearing, where it's coming from, whether he's hallucinating or what. But then the voice says it again. "Put on the mask." With a trembling hand, Motoro placed the Konohi Ignika upon his own mask. He expected to feel a surge of strength, or perhaps the opposite, a sudden trembling weakness. But instead, he felt different. His body felt light and tingled as if a current of energy ran through it. He was falling still, but no longer tumbling out of control. His form was straight as an arrow, and headed for a target still unknown. Images flashed through Motoro's mind. He saw the creation of the Ignika, its millennia of waiting for the proper time to be used, and the destined wearer. He saw it taken from its resting place once before to be used to heal the Great Spirit. And he saw what happened to the one who wore it then. He didn't cry out, or protest, or rush to tear the mask off his face, nor did he waste a single moment in regret. He had never asked to become a Toa, or desired it, and the mantle of hero had never fit comfortably on his shoulders. But now he knew, and the knowledge brought peace. Nuju was right. The universe is a riddle, and today, I am the answer. His arms were thrust out in front of him. They were glowing now, little sparkles of light like the starfield above the island of Matanui. His whole body was changing now, patterns of light swirling, energies being unleashed as the Mask of Life drew forth the essence of the being called Motoro. Is this the end, then? He wondered. Is this what it feels like? Yes, he decided. This was death. This was the price the Ignika demanded for its use. He would no longer exist as Motoro, as a Toa, as a living being of organic muscle and mechanical parts. He would be far less than what he was. And far more. The world was changing all around him, but it did not frighten the Toa of Ice. He knew the real change was in how he was viewing his surroundings. No longer with eyes, a mind, a spirit bound to the physical world. He was becoming pure energy, pure life. The force that would bring the Great Spirit back from death. Already, he could barely remember how it felt to be in battle, or to be lonely, or to feel the warmth of a fire on a cold night. Pleasure, pain, satisfaction, disappointment, these were all just words to him now. He was beyond all that, or almost. But there was one emotion, one part of his former life that he had not forgotten, one memory he refused to surrender. Jala, Holly, Uki, Kongu, Nuparu, his friends, his partners, who had fought beside him and laughed with him and made all the burdens bearable. They were out there now in the black water, about to die at the claws of the Baraki. No one on Metru Nui would ever know of their heroism or their sacrifices they were willing to make. They would never see their homes or those they cared about ever again. His own death he could accept, but theirs, no. That was too high a price to pay, even to buy the salvation of the universe. He was Toa Motoro, at least for a few moments more, and he wore the Mask of Life, or perhaps the Mask of Life now wore him. He didn't know or care. He knew his friends were willing to die for him and his destiny, and for that reason alone, they had to live. Motoro pushed back against the power of the mask, fighting to hold on to his consciousness and his own existence for just another heartbeat. He wrestled with the power, pleaded with it, tried to bend it to his will. The Ignika, for reasons of its own, allowed this. Once before, long ago, a Toa had donned the Ignika and lost his life to complete his mission. That Toa had tried to be brave, but there was fear in his heart, and he met his end with grief and regret.
The Ignika sensed none of that in Motoro. Only a will and determination that rivaled even that of Matanui himself. The Mask of Life, bound now to the energy of Motoro, granted him this power. Motoro seized upon it to perform his final act. It was not one of grand heroism, not a gesture that would shake the universe, but something more powerful and lasting than either one. A simple act of friendship. With that done, Motoro surrendered himself gratefully and completely to his destiny. The merged energies of the Toa and Kanohi mask exploded in the core of the universe, flooding it with light. Streams of golden power flowed into every part of this realm and then beyond it, until it had touched every place where the Great Spirit had once reigned. Just as countless beings had sensed the death of Matanui, so did they now feel life return to him. And in the sky above the city of Metronui, the stars shone brightly once more. Fuck.
This is so sad. Vorzak, play Despacito. Jala's about to go Nova, and the Baraki rush in to stop him before he can. But then all of a sudden there's a blinding white flash of light, and all of a sudden the Toa find themselves in a very familiar place. They find themselves standing in the streets of Metronui, with one of their number gone. It doesn't take long for them to piece together what happened, and for the grief to set in. This was an incredible victory, but the cost was tremendous. Sometime later, we see Nuju in his studies, alone, mourning the loss of the Matoran that had been his translator and friend for over 1,000 years. And he thinks to himself, well, maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe this was a mistake. And without knowing it, he may be right. And what do I mean by that? Well, you're gonna have to keep watching to find out, because we're about to get into 2008, motherfucker.